All right, I'm going to give everybody a few more minutes to join us, and we will start at the top of the hour. All right, it's just about that time. So, welcome everybody to our webinar for today, on-base best practices and troubleshooting. My name is Nella, and I'm very excited to present this topic since troubleshooting is what we do best here on the customer success team. Speaking of the team, check out our current customer success team. I want to give a big welcome to some new members on our team, Stefan and Daniel. This group of people right here is intelligent and motivated, especially when it comes to troubleshooting issues. I'm very happy to be a part of this team and to be able to present this webinar with you all today. Before we jump into the fun stuff, I wanted to remind you that the audience is muted, although be sure to use the chat box that's available to type comments and questions. Please complete the survey that's at the end of the webinar. I really do enjoy reading your feedback and ideas. And if you're curious about other webinars we've done in the past, you can check them out at navient.com/resources/video. And with that, let's talk through our agenda for today. First, we'll talk about some best practices for utilizing OnBase. Then we'll cover some troubleshooting tools you can use, and we'll share some tips to using each tool. And lastly, we'll discuss some tips for contacting support. OnBase empowers you to become more efficient and effective as an organization. It captures your documents and data and allows you to manage these documents in one centralized location. We know OnBase has many capabilities, so you'll want to take the necessary steps to ensure your solution runs smoothly. We believe that the best way to avoid issues from occurring in the future is to prevent them from happening in the first place. We have compiled some best practices to keep in mind while working within OnBase. To start us off, let's take a look at some configuration best practices. Anytime you're performing any type of configuration, we want to think about how the users are going to be affected. Let's talk about the steps to take when configuring documents. The first best practice that benefits how users use OnBase is configuring a document type to have at least one keyword type as required. Enabling this setting prevents users from retrieving documents without entering a value for at least one keyword type. Additionally, when creating documents, add a prefix to the document type. The prefix can help identify quickly the document type group to which the document type belongs. Not only are prefixes helpful for document types, but also custom queries, form types, and more. For example, if a custom query will be used to search for multiple document types within the human resources document type group, the prefix HR can be used in the name of the custom query to help the users identify it easier. Adding icons to processes you know your users will be using often can also help users easily identify what process they're looking for. For example, with this list of forms, the icon of the group of people helps me identify quickly the resource request form. Additionally, notice the EF prefix to help identify the employee's form document type group that's being used for the form. Additionally, OnBase admins should have their own username and password. These should be used not only when making configuration changes, but with everything. Using the manager account instead of your own is a bad practice. Now, this is the only bad practice that I'll be sharing today, so you best not forget it. So now I want to backtrack up a second to this first point that I made about documents having at least one required keyword type. Having at least one required keyword type allows users to perform a search and retrieve a shorter list of results within OnBase. That brings me to my next best practice topic, keywords. When configuring keywords, we want to give our users something called a smart search. A smart search is a short search results list ranging around 50 documents. To accomplish a search results list to return less documents, it's best practice to have that required keyword value and a document date range to search within. To help the search list retrieve the least number of documents, the database will search through the criteria given and start with the keyword that has the least number of documents. Once the selective keyword is identified by the database, the rest of the search criteria helps narrow down which documents to return. For example, let's say the criteria that we're searching for is the following: AP invoices, a document date range for the month of November 2020, and the account number 12345. In this example, the database knows that out of all the documents in the system, there are 1,000 AP invoice documents. It knows there are 10,000 documents imported in the month of November, and the database also knows the account number 12345 has 100 documents in the system. The database will start with the keyword that has the least amount of hits to it, so the database locates the 100 documents with the account number 12345 and filters out the documents that don't have the other matching criteria. This leaves the search result list at 5 documents that fit this criteria. If the statistics were not updated and the database chose to use the document type as a selective keyword, the database would search through 1,000 documents to whittle the list down to 5. Therefore, it is considered a best practice to update your statistics regularly. Additionally, we want to limit the use of wildcards. Wildcards are great when you're searching for a keyword when you're unsure of, but we should be aware of how this affects the database when searching with them. The database uses an index to search for items the same way that we search with the phone book. So for example, if I was to look up the last name Halpert, we would start by locating the H's and finish the search from there. If I try to perform a search with a leading wildcard, the database engine can't efficiently use the index to find the value we're searching for. We recommend using a trailing wildcard when unsure of spelling or are searching for a long value. If wildcards are not used properly, they can cause the database engine to do extra work, which results in taking finite resources away from other searches and processes. Speaking of databases, we want to ensure that the database is happy and healthy, and we can accomplish that with a few maintenance tasks. Starting off with some daily tasks OnBase admin should accomplish. Each day, the OnBase admin should confirm that backups from the previous day ran successfully. All cold, dip, sweep, and other scheduled jobs contain the identification of a source directory from which to retrieve the files. Depending on the schedule of such processes, these directories should be monitored to ensure that files are properly being retrieved and processes are running successfully. In addition to scheduled processes receiving all targeted documents, the proper processing of all of those files should be checked daily. One way of confirming this is to verify that there are no new system unidentified items. This combination of checking the source directories and for new system unidentified items is a simple way to make sure that documents are properly entering the OnBase system. It's also important for the OnBase admins to verify that document locks are not present to ensure that all documents flow through the normal processes. Document locks can prevent users from accessing or processing the locked document. Moving on to weekly tasks the OnBase admin should be aware of. Every week, OnBase admins should be recording the size and free space of the following. First is the SQL transaction log. This log is a record of all database activity. The amount of free space should be recorded to ensure consistency of space for the drive and transaction log. Next is the OnBase database. Recording the size of the OnBase database can be very useful in predicting the amount of space it will consume in the future. This is very helpful in proper capacity planning as well as noticing trends in business activity throughout the year. It's also important to ensure that the location of the OnBase database does not run out of disk space. Lastly, OnBase admin should ensure that there is ample free space in all the locations of the disk groups to prevent processes from failing to import data into OnBase. This can be easily estimated by recording the amount of space being used by each disk group on a weekly basis. Similar to the size of the database or transaction log, there's an added benefit of being aware of the growth of the OnBase system from an overall data standpoint. Capacity planning and preventative measures can be taken prior to a failure. In addition, weekly backups most often entail a full backup of all pertinent data in the OnBase system. This includes all database backups, transaction log backups, and disk group backups that may have been written to a location targeted for the backup to removable media. These backups are critical as they dictate the targeted data for the incremental or differential daily backups. And finally, some monthly tasks OnBase admins should be accomplishing. The first monthly task is to purge transaction logs. The OnBase transaction log keeps a record of all of the events associated in the OnBase database. This includes retrievals, the addition or update of keywords, dip, cold, and other processes. The transaction log also allows users to view a document's history. However, the transaction log can become very large, sometimes as much as 25% of the total database. OnBase admins should first determine the necessity of viewing document histories. If it's deemed that the document histories past, for example, 90 days are no longer needed, the OnBase transaction log should be purged from that date back. We also can't forget to confirm the successful monthly backups. This includes all the database backups, transaction log backups, and disk group backups. And next, we want to remember to purge documents and document maintenance. When a document is deleted from OnBase, it goes into document maintenance. This is similar to a recycling bin where documents can be recovered if necessary or completely removed from the system. For this reason, one could still have a high volume queue from a database perspective, even if only a small number of documents are visible in the queue via the client. By purging the documents and document maintenance, the system removes all records associated with the document from the system, which potentially eliminates high volume queues. Another task we want to cover is each organization should review its policies and procedures regarding the reboot of servers. Most often, Windows-based servers are rebooted on a periodic basis. And last but not least, OnBase admins should be communicating with others to stay up to date on the overall health of OnBase. They should be asking their local IT staff if new operating system patches or service packs have been certified organization-wide, or if there's any future plans to modify the organization's infrastructure that could have an impact on the OnBase servers or users. OnBase admins should hold periodic meetings with OnBase users to discuss any issues, suggestions for improving existing configuration, and any other functionality questions. And finally, OnBase admins should communicate with their solution provider on a periodic basis to discuss things like security bulletins or other release notes specific to their version of OnBase, if any planned changes to the environment will have an impact on OnBase, and if any potential user-suggested enhancements exist in current or later builds of OnBase. In summary, these maintenance tasks are considered a best practice for keeping OnBase working as expected. We always want to confirm successful backups, record statistics of the system, and prepare for additions and changes to the solution. Up next, we're talking about workflow. Workflow streamlines business processes and is designed to accommodate change quickly. That's why both us and our customers love to utilize it for all types of scenarios. The following are some best practices when it comes to workflow. Always design the process before configuring the solution. And then when you're creating, save often and test your solution before implementing it into a production environment. This is a best practice that can be applied to the creation of all processes within OnBase. When designing your solution, include an initial queue to bring the documents in, have other queues configured to perform the tasks, and then include an exit queue for the document to go once all the actions have been performed. The exit queue is a great example of when a timer can be used. The exit queue can be configured with a timer to remove the document from the lifecycle after it has been in the exit queue for, let's say, 30 days. Use timers when applicable to eliminate the amount of user interaction needed for a process. When configuring workflow solutions, use a useful function of a lifecycle that can, words are hard. When configuring workflow solutions, a useful function a lifecycle can have is a rule. These are if-then statements that return a true or false value and then moves the document to the correct queue based on the value. When configuring these rules, we want to use concise language to help others understand the lifecycle solution. For example, if we want to configure a rule for invoices being passed through the workflow, we want to name the rule something like invoice amount less than 1,000. This allows two answers. True, the invoice is less than 1,000, or false, the invoice is not less than 1,000. This is way more helpful than the rule asking invoice amount not less than 1,000. When configuring actions and rules, try nesting 3 levels deep or less. This affects memory consumption and ease of maintenance. Also, put the most probable answer first. If there is a series of rules that determine which action to take in the document, the most probable logic should be evaluated first. This prevents unnecessary work from being performed on every document exposed to that logic. Prior to writing a script, first ensure that a robust functionality within workflow cannot already accomplish the task. If you're unsure that if there are existing actions available to accomplish the task, please reach out to support and we can help determine if scripting is needed. And my last best practice is utilizing your resources. Take advantage of everything there is to access with the Hyland community site. Join groups based on common interests and expertise and learn from shared experiences and discussions. Within these groups, you can access articles geared to a particular topic. You can also participate in forum discussions where you can ask or answer questions, as well as start or continue a discussion about a topic you're passionate about. Community also gives you access to blog posts and training courses. In addition to the training videos and the hands-on labs, you can also access OnBase Sandbox. The OnBase Sandbox hands-on lab gives you the opportunity to explore OnBase in version 16 through Foundation EP4. This can be very helpful in comparing versions or testing out your knowledge after completing some training videos. All of these resources can help break things down and help you gain a full understanding about a topic before jumping into trying to accomplish it. You can also search for previous support cases to see if anyone else has experienced a particular issue before and what they did to resolve it. You may not find an exact match of an issue, but it can be helpful to get ideas flowing for what could cause the issue. Community also has a third-party compatibility list available This is a frequently updated list of tested third-party application compatibilities and the supported on-base versions. This list can be extremely helpful when troubleshooting any processes running into an error while utilizing a third-party app. You can come to this list to check if the on-base versions you're working with is supported for utilizing the third-party application. Community also provides a way for customers to submit ideas for software enhancements. Other members within community can vote on these ideas to help the idea gain points. Once the points reach a threshold, Highland considers them for future enhancements. We'll cover some cool ideas for you to check out at the end of the webinar. So now we know some best practices to keep in mind when working with OnBase. But what happens when things don't work as expected? As much as we love helping our customers, you may not even need us. You may be able to figure out what's causing the issue in your system with the following tools and tips for troubleshooting within OnBase. Before we talk about any tools for troubleshooting, I want to talk about the troubleshooting approach. We want to make sure that we use a methodical approach to issues. We don't want to just run with the first idea that comes to mind. The first step to help us gain a full picture of an issue is to identify the problem. Now, your first thought might be, well, we already know the problem since the user reported it, but sometimes users tend to report the issues as they see them. Sometimes minor details can be overlooked. So to identify the problem efficiently, we can start asking narrative questions. These include who, what, when, where, why, and how questions. Asking these questions can help gain more information than a typical yes or no question. An example of the difference could be something like, is this happening in the thick client versus where is this issue occurring? That second question gives more of an opportunity for more information, such as this happens in the Unity client and the web client on multiple workstations. Once we've gathered all of the information necessary, we can begin to hypothesize. This is where we start to make educated guesses about where the problem could be based on the information of the problem, where could these parts fail? That's the real question we want to be asking ourselves in this step. Before moving on to the next step, we want to create a test plan to prove your hypothesis is truly what's going on. This brings us to the next step, testing your hypothesis. We want to follow this test plan when testing our hypothesis, and we want to capture any necessary logs and analyze that captured information. We may need to go back a step if we were unable to come to a resolution. However, once you have determined the cause, you can then move on to the next step and correct the issue. Here, we want to create a plan to fix it, go in, make the configuration change, and then communicate to necessary groups of the change being made and ensure the resolution was successful. Lastly, we want to document the results. Within this documentation, we want to include information regarding the issue, what did not work, and of course, what did work to resolve the issue. We should also document the plan to implement the fix along with the steps taken. Following the steps can help you find a resolution faster and help troubleshooting other issues down the road, especially when you take really good notes to document with. Like I said earlier, it's really easy to just run with the first idea that comes to mind rather than taking a step back and looking at all the details. So here's some tips to remember when troubleshooting. The first tip for troubleshooting is when you're hypothesizing, it's important to understand the typology and each of the components involved in the process you're troubleshooting. It may be easiest to sketch this out on paper to visualize the components and observe where they could fail. For example, if you're troubleshooting a Unity client issue, sketch out the Unity client talking to the app server, which then talks to the database and the disk groups. This allows you to see it all right in front of you, and then you can think about each one of these physical components and how they could fail. Sketching out issues can also help you see what can't be touched, such as network connections. These connections are just as much in play as the physical components themselves. Let's say in this sketch, we want to know if the Unity client is even able to communicate to the application server. To confirm connectivity between the Unity client and the server, you can copy the application server service path and paste it into a Windows browser on the client. You can obtain the application server service path by logging into OnBase config and navigating to utils, application server configuration, and there you should see the path. Once it's pasted into your browser, if it returns the service page from the server, you have confirmed connectivity. That page will look something like this. So another tip when troubleshooting is to test recreating the issue with a different user account or with a different workstation. This can also help when trying to identify where the issue is coming from and help determine the next steps for resolving it. So the first tool that we're going to discuss is the Diagnostics Console. The Diagnostics Console is a standalone application developed by Hyland Software to obtain a diagnostics information related to OnBase products. Diagnostics Console can be used when you're troubleshooting any core-based module or anything that will route through the application server. When enabling Diagnostics Console, there are two options, remote and local. The local option is used when you're on the server to capture the errors. The remote option is used if you're running Diagnostics Console on the workstation and you want to capture errors from the application server. Once Diagnostics Console is launched, the Hyland Diagnostics server is turned on. Diagnostics will start collecting information. Information is organized by tabs, which you have the option to show or hide specific tabs, as you can see in this screenshot here. This does not mean that Diagnostics will collect all of that information. The mail slots need to be enabled to report on the additional tabs. Mail slots can be enabled within WAMCON or the web config file. WAMCON is only going to function for the application server or the web server. And if you're trying to enable any sort of logging to the Diagnostics Console for a core-based service, it needs to be done at the web.config level. Speaking of mail slots, let's jump into some tips for using Diagnostics Console. So the first tip to remember is to disable the mail slots once you're finished with troubleshooting. Keeping these mail slots enabled after you're done recreating the issue increases the potential that it would impact performance. In addition to disabling the mail slots, after recreating the issue, you should also tell Diagnostics Console to stop listening with the Tools tab. This way, when you're ready to start reviewing what Diagnostics has captured, you can focus on the messages that you need to pay attention to. If you don't tell Diagnostics Console to stop listening, it will capture everything communicating to the app server. Eventually, the old messages and errors will disappear to make room for the additional information. Once you've finished recreating the issue, you can also save the information collected with the Diagnostics Console. I always choose the option to save all tabs. This is a great option to use so you don't miss any important information. So now what do you do once you have saved these logs from Diagnostics Console? Start looking at the tabs Diagnostics has collected information in. The Errors tab can be very helpful as to why or where the issue is arising. Within the Errors tab, look through the Messages columns. Sometimes the message shown can lead you straight to why a user has run into an issue. Other times, the message can be unclear and unhelpful. And if that's the case, the next steps would be to take a look at the module, class, and the method columns next. These can point you in the right direction as to where the issue occurred and what was being attempted when the issue occurred. You can also filter these columns to display the information you're searching for. This can help reduce the number of messages distracting you from what you want to search. And the last troubleshooting tip I want to talk about is logging Diagnostics Console to a file. When an issue is sporadic and you are unable to recreate it on demand, logging diagnostics to a file can help capture the error when it does occur. You can then find the necessary information in the location that you configured the logs to save. The next tool we have here is Workflow Doctor. Workflow Doctor is used to examine the state and general health of a lifecycle configuration and the related workflow system. It can be used to diagnose existing and potential problems with the workflow lifecycle, and results from the Workflow Doctor can be filtered using the buttons at the top of the window. You can filter by errors, warnings, messages, or by a selected lifecycle. By selecting these filter buttons, you are able to narrow the information displayed in the Doctor's Results tab. Another tool available for troubleshooting workflow is Workflow Trace. You can enable Workflow Trace with the THIC client, Web client, or the Unity client. Workflow Trace should be used when troubleshooting workflow logic, such as rule evaluations, action executions, or document routing. While it can provide additional information regarding workflow exceptions, the Errors tab within the Diagnostics console is typically sufficient for that. In addition to enabling Workflow Trace within the correct client, you must also enable Workflow Trace tab in Diagnostics by navigating to the Tabs option. Once it's enabled, you should see a message saying tracing has been enabled for a specific session along with the username. If you don't see the message, Diagnostics Console is not capturing tracing messages for that specific user. Now some tips for using Workflow Trace. If possible, it's recommended to enable tracing for a single user. If you must enable it for multiple users, make sure you're using the filters within Diagnostics Console. This way, it's easier to determine which users that you're looking for. Additionally, you can utilize filters within the Diagnostics Console to filter a document handle. A document handle gives you the ability to follow a single document through a process from start to finish. This is especially important when troubleshooting rule evaluations. If something is evaluating to false, but you believe that it should be true, following a specific document handle or document ID through the process can tell you perhaps why you were receiving an unexpected evaluation. Within the Unity client and with the correct permissions, the Unity client is equipped with some troubleshooting tools. These tools can be found by navigating to File and Troubleshooting. Here you'll find some tool options. The first we'll talk about is the troubleshooting option. From a client perspective, you may see additional information that you would not capture on the server side. These logs are typically used only when working with Navient. So if you do capture anything within the troubleshooting in the Unity client, save it to a file to provide the information gathered to our specialists. Next, we have the On-Demand Diagnostics, or ODD option. Within the Unity client, you can see diagnostics logging for a single user session by accessing the On-Demand Diagnostics feature. This collects information particularly from workflow or workview processes. You can also configure the level of messages that you would like to log. Level 0 would not log any information, whereas level 4 returns the most information for that corresponding source. A best practice when running on-demand diagnostics is to start at level 1 and gradually increase the level when necessary. And the last tool the Unity client will cover is the request profile diagram. This is essentially telling us how long each of the requests take between the Unity client running on the workstation and the application server. This can be helpful particularly when troubleshooting performance issues. Within the request profile diagram, we can determine if requests are taking longer than they should. The next tool we'll talk about is Windows Event Viewer. This is a Windows utility built into Windows operating systems to capture diagnostics events. You can refer to Windows Event Viewer when troubleshooting workstation or server issues, or if there's or if there is an issue within an application on a specific workstation. Windows Event Viewer does not need to be enabled, for it is consistently capturing. Because of this, we want to pay attention to the error events that are captured when recreating an issue. This isn't meant to say that the plain information events aren't equally important. There may be some situations where the information level events can help provide additional clarity of a problem. Which brings me to my first tip of Windows Event Viewer. It's important to not disregard those information events without looking at them first. For troubleshooting on base, we want to specifically be looking within the application and system logs located within the Windows log folder. We'll also want to search within the Hyland and OnBase logs. These will not appear if OnBase was installed manually, so if the setup or MSI are used to install OnBase, the Hyland and OnBase logs should be created. If you do not have access to the OnBase log and Hyland Diagnostics service is running when an error occurs, the OnBase log will capture anything that would be typically captured on the Errors tab in Diagnostics. Although Diagnostics Console may give you more information, this is a great place to start if the Diagnostics Console was not running during the event. Now let's say you've collected information surrounding the problem and are ready to reach out to support. I'd like to provide you with some tips to do that. We want to fully understand the issue before attempting to troubleshoot and resolve it. To help us understand the issue, please provide additional information to the best of your ability. First, ask the user experiencing the error if they can recreate the error on demand, or if it's a sporadic error. If they can create it on demand, try performing the same actions and test if you are able to recreate the same error. We also want to know if there were any recent changes or Windows updates that have been performed recently. This can potentially affect some OnBase processes. You can also follow the first step in the troubleshooting approach, identify the issue. You can ask users questions like who's experiencing this issue, what are the steps taken before experiencing this error, and when did this error first start occurring. Providing screenshots of what you're experiencing and screenshots of specific errors can also help us understand the issue more. When applicable, we may ask for diagnostic logs or bug reports. Instead of providing screenshots of the diagnostics logs, please use the option to save all tabs within the diagnostics console. This will allow us to read through the information gathered within each tab. By following these tips, you could help save time by finding a resolution with the additional information that you are able to provide. All right, we've covered a lot. We began discussing best practices to keep in mind when working with OnBase, including configuration settings and workflow design tips. If you want your solution to run smoothly, we recommend keeping the database healthy by completing maintenance tasks periodically. We then talked about troubleshooting approach and what should be taken, and we then talked about the troubleshooting approach that should be taken when things aren't running smoothly. It can be easy to panic and just run with the first solution your brain produces, but it's most important to gather as much information about an issue as possible. Information about an issue can be gathered with the tools that we reviewed together. This includes the diagnostics console, tools within the Unity client, workflow trace, and event viewer. We finished up this presentation with tips to reaching out to support, which essentially includes providing as much information as possible. I know it can be a lot in a short amount of time, but that's why it's time for questions. Please take this time to ask any questions if you haven't already. All right, I see one question. It says, what OnBase version is this based on? These are general for all OnBase versions, best practices and troubleshooting tips. All right, are there any educational materials for interfacing with an existing SAP environment? That's a great question. I will have to do some more research into that one and get back to you. Can the purges you described be automated? I want to say yes, but I have to do a little bit more research before I actually confirm that is accurate. So I will reach out to you to get that answer to you. All right. All right, since we are getting close on our finished time, I will be reaching out to anybody that I did not get to answer their questions. And we are going to move on with the rest of this presentation. So we are starting to take the initiative to shout out some customer ideas that are starting to get some traction on Hyland community. Ideas are designed to suggest improvements for Hyland products and solutions. When the idea is posted, other members can vote up on the idea, and once the points reach a threshold, the idea is considered by Hyland for future enhancements. So here's a few neat ideas that I want to share with you. The first is to add the option to test workflow solutions without leaving Studio. The next idea is for a dark mode option in Unity Client. And the last idea is to allow headers in DIP index files. So if any of those ideas sound interesting to you and you want a direct link to vote on them, please reach out to support@navient.com and we can provide that link to you. Curious about how enterprise search is used to provide on-demand access to information that you need when you need it? Join this session August 18th to learn how you can leverage the powerful discovery capabilities of enterprise search. And that's all that I have for you today. I just want to thank everyone for joining this webinar. Again, please complete the survey, and if you have any questions, please reach out to support@navient.com. Everyone have an awesome rest of your week and a great weekend.